discovered my son in the midst of his mischief and unmissable a real tale of betrayal. It is often said that trust serves as the bedrock upon which every family is built. But what if a single secret, a solitary discovery, unravels the very fabric of everything you held to be true? I'm speaking of a betrayal that sends a chill through your very core. It's the kind of moment that finds you in the heart of your existence, gazing around, questioning the authenticity of it all. This is more than mere narrative. This is the tale of my existence. And allow me to share, nothing, truly nothing, could have braced me for the revelations that awaited me. In my mind's eye, I can still see that pivotal instant when everything changed. Have you ever noticed how individuals often speak of sensing something amiss deep within their core? That persistent sensation that lingers, like a soft murmur in the recesses of your thoughts, hinting that something feels amiss. I possessed that. For a span of weeks. Perhaps even several months. I turned a blind eye to it. I convinced myself that it was all just a figment of my imagination. I found myself weary. Contemplating deeply. Embracing the flare of the moment. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware. I simply wished to remain unaware. The harsh reality of truth, it remains indifferent to our preparedness for its revelation. It approaches you regardless. And when it strikes, it shatters you. Once upon a time, I was simply a devoted wife. A typical mother. My heart was filled with love for my family, I embraced my part, and I fulfilled every expectation placed upon me. Life had its flaws. But then again, whose life is without them? And then, in a fleeting instant, a seemingly trivial detail transformed everything. It found me when I least expected it. I had no intention of prying. Nor did I harbor any doubts. It was merely a twist of fate. A surprising turn of events. A single look. Just one misstep. In a fleeting instant the cosmos whispered. Behold the existence you believe you understand. I long to return to that time. I long to erase it from my memory. Yet, once an image is etched in your mind, it becomes impossible to erase it. Listen closely, for what I share with you is no ordinary tale of betrayal. It transcends the mere tale of a deceitful partner, or a fractured union. No, this delves deeper into shadows more profound. And touches on the intimate. For the individual I discovered, the one concealing a secret so intricate, so beyond belief, was someone I could have never anticipated. And when the truth struck me, it felt as though my heart had been torn straight from my chest. I can still picture that moment, rooted to the spot, unable to move. Struggling for breath. In a moment of disbelief. I found myself thinking, oh my God, this can't be real. This cannot be unfolding before our eyes. Yet, it was unfolding before our very eyes. And thus, the journey was only just commencing. Before I share my discoveries, before we embark on this journey together, there's one thing I need from you. Join the journey of the astonishing tale of betrayal. What I am about to share will transform your perception of trust for all time. And believe me, this tale, it's just beginning to unfold. As you reflect on your journey, there are those fleeting, seemingly insignificant instances that, had you only paused to notice, might have revealed the unfolding of what was to come. Yet, the past has a way of revealing its harsh truths. It reveals to you every sign you overlooked, every clue that lay right before your eyes. And believe me, the signs were unmistakably present. I simply wished to avoid their presence. For if I had dared to acknowledge the truth unfolding within my own walls, I would have been compelled to confront a reality I was not prepared to meet. That my family, the ones I held dearest, were not who I believed them to be. Allow me to transport you to another time. To grasp the events that unfolded, one must first delve into our essence. Once upon a time, joy filled my days. At least, that's what I believe I was. Perhaps I merely convinced myself of that truth. No matter the circumstances, I fulfilled my duty. Once, I held the title of a wife. A mother. I crafted a sanctuary, nurtured a little one, and devoted all that I was to my partner. I encountered him in his youth. We plunged swiftly. He possessed an undeniable charm, and a relentless ambition. The sort of man who entered a room and commanded it effortlessly, as if it were his stage. I cherished him deeply. Yet, at some point in the journey, a transformation occurred. Marriage has a peculiar knack for bringing that about. You enter with the belief that it revolves around love, passion, and partnership. Yet, as time flows on, it can transform into something wholly different. In the rhythm of daily life, there lies a tale waiting to unfold. Separation. In the stillness, a profound quiet envelopes the world. In the beginning, it was the little details. He found himself toiling into the night more frequently. Ceased inquiring about the events of my day. I ceased to pay attention to the moments when I styled my hair or made an effort to present myself beautifully for him. Then it grew into something grander. Evenings of shared meals slipped away. Unanswered phone calls. Exchanges that seemed more like duties than opportunities for genuine connection. In the end, it seemed as though we were merely going through the motions of life. Two souls sharing a space, performing their parts, yet the connection between them has faded into the shadows. And that was the moment when the loneliness crept in. It's a curious thing. This sensation of solitude that can linger even in the embrace of marriage. It's a deeper kind of solitude, where the presence of another only amplifies the distance, making them feel like they're worlds apart. And then, there appeared my son. Once, he was my little one. My companion in the twilight. In his childhood, he was my shadow, trailing behind me at every turn. He took my hand, sat beside me as I prepared the meal, sharing every detail of his day with me. Our bond was unbreakable. More intimate than the bond shared by many mothers and sons. Yet, as time passed, he matured. And gradually, he began to distance himself. In the beginning, I believed it was just an ordinary occurrence. As children journey through life, they begin to seek their own independence. Yet, with him, it carried a unique essence. It seemed as though he was not merely maturing, he was fading away. One day, I awoke to the startling truth that he had become a stranger to me. He ceased sharing the tales of his life with me. He began to secure his door. His phone lay perpetually face down, a silent sentinel, buzzing with messages that remained shrouded in mystery. There were nights when he vanished into the shadows, leaving no trace behind. For days on end, he hardly uttered a word to me. And when I would inquire, "Is everything all right?" he would simply nod in understanding. Cast me aside. I attempted to convince myself that it was just part of the ordinary flow of life. He was simply occupied. That he possessed a life uniquely his own. Yet, deep within me, I was aware. Something felt amiss. Reflecting on the past, I realized I could have fought more fiercely. It would have been wise to seek further clarity. Had I only been more aware. Perhaps I could have anticipated what lay ahead. Perhaps I had the power to intervene. Perhaps I wouldn't find myself in the center of my own dwelling, gazing at my son, my hands trembling. My heart shattering, pondering a question I never imagined I would have to confront. Who might this individual be? And worse still, what has he done? Yet, those questions remained unasked in that moment. For the simple reason that I was unaware. Not at this moment. Yet, I was on the brink of discovery. By the time I realized, the moment had slipped away, lost to the sands of time. I always believed that when your life takes a turn that lasts for eternity, you would sense it deeply. As if a cautionary tale. A change in the atmosphere. A fleeting instant when all of existence pauses, suspended in time. Yet, that is not the way the tale unfolds. Life doesn't offer a grand drumroll before it snatches the ground from beneath your feet. In the tiniest, most serene moments, it unfolds. The kind that slips into your mind without a second thought. Like a phone buzzing with anticipation on a kitchen counter. And so, the tale began. The hour was growing late. The kind of late when the entire house lay in slumber. Enveloped in that haunting stillness that only graces the depths of night. There I was, perched at the dining table, cradling a lukewarm cup of tea. My gaze lost in the stillness of the wall before me. Of late, I found myself engaging in that quite frequently. There I was, immersed in a world of my own musings. Restlessness keeps sleep at bay. Completely spent, unable to muster the energy for anything more. And then I heard it. A subtle tremor. Initially, I brushed it aside. Yet, it hummed once more. And once more. The device belonging to my son. It rested quietly on the counter, waiting to be noticed. Gaze directed towards the ground. In that fleeting instant, I found myself lingering. Caught in the web of time. Perhaps it was the time of day. Perhaps it was the way my stomach nodded, that soft voice in the recesses of my mind urging me to pay attention. I reassured myself that I was being utterly absurd. He had reached the age of maturity. He lived a life filled with friends and a job that defined him. Naturally, he would receive messages. Yet, it hummed once more. And just before I could rein myself in, my gaze darted to the screen. Only for a fleeting moment. Merely a single look. And that was all it took. A name. The name was unfamiliar to me. It was not one of his companions. Not a colleague. A name belonging to a woman. And beneath it, the words I can hardly fathom that we are embarking on this journey. My breath was momentarily suspended. For a fleeting moment, I whispered to myself that it was nothing at all. It seems I simply misunderstood it. It was a matter of pure innocence. Yet, within the depths of my being, I held a different truth. It was more than mere words. It was the essence. It held an air of mystery, shrouded in whispers and unspoken truths. A tale of the forbidden. And just like that, the uneasiness that had lingered within me for months transformed into something altogether different. Something chillier. Something genuine. I averted my eyes. My heart raced with an urgency that felt almost palpable. My hands were slick with a clammy sheen. I found myself puzzled by my own reactions. He had reached adulthood. He possessed every right to seek companionship. To embark on a journey with a girlfriend. But then, what is the reason? What made this seem off? Footsteps echoed in the silence. His tail. I stood still, thoughts swirling like a tempest in my mind. I had not laid a finger on his phone. I found myself in a situation where I was innocent, untouched by any wrongdoing. As he crossed the threshold into the softly illuminated kitchen, an unsettling expression on his face sent a shiver through my core, tightening my stomach even further. In an instant, his gaze darted to the counter. The way his entire being coiled tightly for a fleeting moment before he summoned the strength to ease into calmness. He lunged for his phone with a sudden urgency. As if he feared I had caught a glimpse of something hidden. As if he were concealing a secret. I took a deep breath, feigning indifference to the unfolding scene. "You're awake at this hour," I remarked, maintaining a steady tone. His gaze avoided mine. Indeed. Rest eluded me. His fingers danced above his phone, pausing for just a heartbeat before he turned it face down and tucked it away into his pocket. I sensed my breath catch. I had witnessed it unfold before my eyes. That fleeting pause. That fleeting shadow of remorse. "I have a question to pose." "Pray tell, who might that be?" Yet, a part of me hesitated. Perhaps I feared what the answer might reveal. Instead, I simply nodded and observed him as he reached for a glass of water, his shoulders rigid, his movements taut with unspoken tension. In that heavy, oppressive silence, we found ourselves standing apart, both of us acutely aware of the unseen barrier that had unexpectedly emerged between us. In that instant, a sense of unease washed over me, whispering that something was amiss. A shadow loomed over everything, hinting that something was amiss. And I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. I ought to have released it into the ether. I ought to have turned my back on that kitchen, tucked that moment away in the shadows of my mind, and told myself it was all just a figment of my imagination. Yet, I found myself unable to do so. For when suspicion takes root, it stirs and grows, refusing to remain silent. It flourishes. It unfolds. It envelopes your thoughts, weaving through them, causing you to doubt even the most steadfast beliefs. And the most troubling aspect, it transforms you into a version of yourself that feels utterly foreign. That night, I found myself drifting in and out of restless dreams. As I reclined in my bed, my gaze fixed upon the ceiling, I found myself caught in a loop, reliving that moment again and again in the theater of my mind. The manner in which he paused. He seized his phone as if it were a vital connection to the world. The manner in which he averted my gaze. It was merely a message. Merely a name. Only a handful of words. Then why did it seem as though my entire universe was shifting beneath me? The following morning, I reassured myself that I was simply overanalyzing the situation. That I was being absurd. Yet, the instant he stepped into the kitchen, I realized I was not. He gazed. Unique. Not merely weary. Not merely far away. Yet, watchful. As if he were preparing for what was to come. As if he sensed that I had glimpsed something beyond the veil of what was meant to be seen. And that was the moment I truly sensed it. That transformation. It is the moment when the veil is lifted, revealing that a cherished soul, one who has walked alongside you through the tapestry of life, is harboring a hidden truth from your gaze. And then, in an instant, every tiny detail begins to seem askew. I began to observe more intently. Not because I sought to ensnare him in any wrongdoing. Not because I sought out conflict. Yet, I found myself unable to turn a blind eye to it any longer. As I continued to observe, my awareness deepened. The twilight hours. The hushed phone calls. The manner in which he recoiled at his father's words. And the door, firmly locked. That door had always stood open, a silent invitation to the world beyond. Not when he was in his teenage years. Not even in moments of anger towards us. But what about now? Now. It was forever sealed away. I lingered outside his room, my hand poised above the doorknob, caught in a moment of uncertainty. What was I even doing? Was I truly on the verge of knocking? What could I possibly share? Hey, I noticed something unusual on your phone, and now I'm starting to wonder if there's something you're keeping from me. I was unable to. I would not. For in that instant when the words escaped my lips, I felt the weight of a decision that would forever alter my path. And perhaps I wasn't quite prepared for that moment. Ah. But what truly stands out as the most challenging aspect? The element that haunted my thoughts in the stillness of the night. It wasn't merely the hidden nature of it all. It was the sensation slowly unfurling within my chest. This tale extended beyond his own journey. It was a tale woven around my essence. For this was more than mere uneasiness. It was more than mere maternal intuition. It held a profound essence. A feeling that eluded my very ability to articulate. A sensation that twisted my stomach, set my hands trembling, and sent my heart racing. A sensation that perhaps I ought to have avoided. A sensation that eluded my words. And I loathed myself for it. I began to ponder the very essence of it all. What was it about this that troubled me so deeply? What made it resonate so deeply? Was it because I had already experienced the loss of my husband in so many ways? And now I was facing the heart-wrenching reality of losing my son as well. Was it because I had spent years feeling unseen? And now even the one person I believed I could still grasp was eluding my touch? Or was it something entirely different? Something more sinister? There was a truth I found hard to acknowledge. Even within the depths of my own heart. I ought to have faced it head-on. Him. I ought to have sought out the truth. Yet, I chose not to. Instead, I committed the gravest error one can make when they sense that a hidden truth lies just beyond their grasp. I lingered in anticipation. And I observed. And I allowed it to envelop me. Until all that remained was the essence of reality. And what about then? It had long since passed the point of no return. I had no intention of finding it. I wasn't on a quest for anything. Yet. I did. And from that moment on, everything changed forever. It began with a simple spark of innocence. As I embarked on the task of tidying his room, I found myself immersed in the little details that told a story of its own. I understand. He stood as a man of the world, and I found no justification for my presence in that space. Yet, the shadows of the past linger on. In the days of his youth, I would often find myself tidying up for him, and on that particular day, I reassured myself that I was merely putting things in order. And that concludes the tale. Merely brushing off the surface. Merely arranging a handful of shirts. Simply embracing the journey of motherhood. But then, I beheld it. A mysterious box. Hidden in the shadows beneath his bed. It was a small, wooden box, secured with a flimsy latch. Nothing out of the ordinary, is there? But it truly was. For I had never laid my eyes upon it before. And in that moment, my heart raced with fervor. In an instant, clarity washed over me. Hidden within was a secret meant to remain unseen. I ought to have turned and left. In hindsight, I realize I ought to have honored his need for solitude. Ah! But what is it about suspicion that lingers in the shadows? What about fear? It compels you to embark on journeys you never imagined you'd take. My hands danced with a life of their own. Racing ahead of my thoughts. The latch sprang open with a gentle ease. Nearly excessive. With great ease. As if it had been anticipating my arrival. As if the truth had been patiently lingering in the shadows, eager to be discovered at last. Oh, how I rue the day I dared to lift the lid on that box. The first thing that caught my eye were letters. Written by hand. Countless pages filled with inked words, meticulously folded and pressed together, as if they were shyly retreating from the light. My throat constricted. My hands trembled as I reached for one. I reassured myself that it was merely a trivial matter. Perhaps ancient correspondence. Perhaps a tale from long ago. Yet, it was when I began to read that everything changed. And my blood turned to ice. You linger in my thoughts, a constant presence I can't shake off. Whenever we share a moment, I sense reborn once more. Though I understand the consequences, the pull is simply too strong to resist. You evoke emotions in me that have long been dormant. Each. The words cut into me. Sharp and unyielding. This was not a mere passing moment. This was no mere infatuation. This was a gripping experience. Whispers of the unknown. Off limits. Breath was a fleeting whisper. Barely there. As I rifled through the letters in a frenzy, my thoughts whirled like a tempest, and the world around me began to fade into a haze. And then, I beheld it. A printed message delivered through the art of correspondence. One who truly delved into the depths of emotions. A tale that spoke of a certain place. A tale of a hotel. A tale unfolds. A gathering of minds. I held the paper tightly, my knuckles paling with the pressure. It had transcended mere words. It was indeed a reality. Once upon a time, this was unfolding. And, most troubling of all, I remained in the dark about who he was meeting. I let the letters fall from my grasp. Every inch of me burned with an intense heat. Denial gripped me tightly. Its voice a frantic plea urging me to retreat, to turn away, to act as if none of it had ever crossed my path. Yet I had. And now? The question that had been lingering in the shadows of my mind for weeks blazed brighter than ever. Who is it that we seek? Whom did he behold? Whom was he stealthily slipping away to rendezvous with? Who could it be that was sending him those messages in the quiet hours of the night? And what is the reason behind that? What was it about the answer that filled me with such dread? I pushed the letters back into the box, my hands clumsy, my breath quick and uneven. It was evident that my son was entangled in an affair. But with whom? A colleague? A companion? Is there someone more seasoned? Someone he ought to avoid? Or perhaps something even more dire? There was a thought that lingered in the shadows. One I couldn't muster the courage to voice. A surge of nausea washed over me as those thoughts took hold. I rose unsteadily, clutching the edge of his bed to regain my balance. I was compelled to uncover the truth. I needed to uncover the truth. As my stomach twisted and my instincts howled within me, I knew deep down that whatever lay ahead was far more dreadful than I could have ever envisioned. And I found myself unprepared for the revelation. Not in the slightest. I needed to uncover the truth. I needed to witness it firsthand. For no matter how many letters I discovered, no matter how many whispered calls reached my ears, no matter how loudly my instincts urged me, there remained a fragment of my being grasping onto that final thread of hope. A fragment of my being that craved to be flawed. A part of me that yearned to stray from the path of right. For if I wasn't, if the thoughts swirling in my mind held any truth, then my world wouldn't merely break. It would splinter into countless pieces. On that night when I trailed behind him, it was as if my body had become a mere vessel, no longer under my control. I felt a profound emptiness. For matters of the heart. For moments that were never meant to be unveiled. I eased into a space, just distant enough to remain unseen. And then, I lingered in anticipation. Minutes unfurled like the slow passage of hours. His car was in view, yet he remained hidden from sight. Not at this moment. And then, a dance of motion. With a gentle creak. The door on the driver's side swung open. And there he stood. My child. My little one. Adorned in attire that speaks of elegance, yet venturing into the realm of a laid-back evening. A restless energy in his movements. There was a distinct intention in the manner of his stride. And then, a different car arrived, adding a new twist to the unfolding scene. Adjacent to his. My hands clutched the steering wheel with such intensity that my knuckles transformed into a ghostly white. I leaned in closer, my breath creating a mist on the glass. My whole being caught in a chill. With a soft creak, the passenger door of the other car swung open. A figure emerged from the shadows. And then, I beheld her. And my world came to a standstill. It was she. My dearest companion. The woman with whom I had entrusted my most profound secrets. The woman who had shared countless coffee dates with me, her laughter filling the air. Her attentive listening a balm, her advice a guiding light. The woman who stood by my side as my marriage began to unravel. The woman who had grasped my hand as tears streamed down my face. Mourning the chasm that had grown between me and my husband. She. My chest constricted with such intensity that I feared I might lose consciousness. My vision became a haze. My ears echoed with a resounding ring. It was as if the weight of the world was pulling me under. What is the reason for this? This was more than mere betrayal. This was a blade. Plunged deep into my heart, twisting with each fleeting moment that slipped away. They remained oblivious to their surroundings. Unbeknownst to them, they failed to glance around. Oblivious to the eyes that might be upon them. They had settled into a cozy ease. Overly known. As if they were revisiting a familiar tale, one they had spun countless times before. She offered him a warm smile. Made contact. Gently brushed against his arm. And what of him? He allowed her to proceed. He embraced it fully. And then, hand in hand, they vanished into the embrace of the hotel. I found myself frozen in place. I found myself gasping for air. This was more than just my son being unfaithful. This was more than a mere betrayal from my closest companion. This was a tale of two souls intertwined. United as one. Concealing a truth so unfathomable, so beyond belief, that my mind simply could not grasp it. But my heart understood. It had been aware from the very beginning. What comes next? At that moment the truth stood unwavering. And there was no escaping it. For I had witnessed it unfold before my very eyes. Through my own eyes. And everything would change forever. As I reflect on the journey, the details of my drive home elude me. It's a blur the moment the key slipped into the ignition, and yet here I am, caught in the midst of it all, unaware of how I arrived at this point. I can't recall the moment I drove away from that parking lot, watching them fade into the shadows of that hotel room. The stoplights fade from memory, the turns blur into one another. And the other cars on the road become mere shadows in the backdrop of my journey. What lingers in my mind is the profound silence. The silence enveloped me. A heavy cloak that pressed down on my chest, thick and unyielding, as if it were a weight I could never escape. It was a silence that held 1,000 whispers. The world continued its relentless dance. Vehicles continued to speed by. The radio continued to hum gently in the background. Yet, within me, an emptiness lingered. Only a void. As I finally rolled into the driveway, the house appeared transformed. Not in a physical sense. In a manner so subtle that it would escape the attention of all but the most discerning observers. Yet, in my heart, it had lost its essence of home. It was as if the world had transformed into a grand performance space. An intricately woven tapestry of deception. A realm where we embraced our characters, husband, wife, son, friend. Yet, in that moment, I realized the narrative was nothing but a fabrication. Now, I understood that hidden beneath the facade, decay was quietly taking hold. As I crossed the threshold, a world unfolded before me. The atmosphere hung heavy, a silence that felt almost tangible. The lights remained unlit. I kept my coat on. I simply remained in that spot. Stilled, my thoughts echoed with haunting images, looping endlessly, like a relentless nightmare that would not release its grip. I chose not to look back. I had a feeling it was him all along. My child. My heart raced in my ears as I heard him navigate through the house. Keys clattering onto the counter. A relaxed breath escapes. The soft thud of his shoes as they were cast aside. Merely another evening. A night like any other, wrapped in the familiar embrace of the mundane. As if he hadn't just shared a hotel room with the woman I had placed my utmost trust in. As if he bore no burden of a hidden truth that had the power to shatter my world. I tilted my head just a bit. Just a glimpse, barely catching sight of him from the periphery of my vision. As he navigated the digital landscape on his phone, the gentle light of the screen cast a warm glow upon his face, revealing a moment suspended in time. He was completely unaware of my presence, lost in his own world. He remained utterly unfazed. And that was the moment that shattered me. It wasn't merely his actions that stood out, but rather the remarkable absence of any haunting shadows from them. That he could simply stroll in here, into the home I crafted. The life I bestowed upon him, without a trace of remorse or pause. As if it held no significance at all. As if I held no significance at all. In that fleeting moment, a primal urge to let out a cry surged within me. I felt an overwhelming urge to seize his phone, hurl it against the wall, and witness it explode into countless fragments. Mirroring the way he had broken me apart. I longed to take his face in my hands, to compel him to meet my gaze, and to demand, "How could you do this? How could you turn your back on me in such a way? What is the duration? How long has this tale been unfolding?" Yet, I chose not to. I was unable to. For fear that if I spoke, the words that would escape my lips might betray me. With a heavy heart, I chose to turn away and made my way upstairs. Silence reigns. That night, sleep eluded me. I found myself lying in bed, gazing up at the ceiling. As the same thoughts swirled around my mind like vultures, relentless and haunting. Ought I to face him? Should I reveal their secrets? Is it time to share this with my husband? What would he choose to embark upon? What might he express? Would he truly care? And her, my so-called best friend, the woman who had been my confidant. Would she even feign remorse? Or had she already concluded that I wasn't deserving of the truth? As dawn broke, the sound of my phone echoed through the stillness of the morning. The moment I heard that voice, I instinctively knew who it belonged to, no need to glance at the screen. Her name illuminated the screen, pure and ordinary, just as it always had been. But now it carried a sense of grime. I gazed at it, my heart racing, my fingers gripping the device with intensity. I could respond. I could seek the truth. I could coax her into saying it, into admitting it. Or I could weave a tale. Imagine I was unaware. Imagine that all remained unchanged. Act as if I was whole, even as I crumbled within. The phone continued to ring, its persistent sound echoing through the silence. Amplify your voice. More determined. My hands quivered with anticipation. And then I allowed it to slip into the realm of voicemail. For the simple reason that I wasn't prepared. Not at this moment. And what of my husband? The man who was meant to understand me more deeply than anyone else. He wandered through life, utterly unaware. Oblivious to the tempest gathering just beneath his very senses. At the breakfast table, he perused the newspaper, savoring his coffee as if today were merely a continuation of the ordinary. As if he hadn't already let me slip away. As if he were blissfully unaware that I stood mere moments from setting this whole place ablaze. I settled into my seat opposite him, my body rigid, my thoughts a blank slate. I swirled my coffee, gazing into the dancing liquid, searching for clarity in the chaos. Should I share this with him? Should I hold it within? Shall I allow this secret to fester within me? Consuming my very essence from the inside out. The words lingered on my tongue, poised and eager, yearning to be unleashed into the world. Yet they never arrived. For I understood that once they realized it, there would be no turning back. Thus, I consumed them whole. As I lifted the warm cup to my lips, I savored the rich aroma before taking a sip of my coffee. And I wove a tale of pretense. For yet another day. Another day of relentless torment. Have you ever experienced the sensation of inhabiting a body that felt foreign to you? As if you were gliding through the tapestry of existence. Moving through the motions, uttering words. Inhaling and exhaling, merely existing, yet everything felt devoid of authenticity now. That was I. I had ceased to be a person. I existed as a mere shell. A vacant, echoing shell of the woman I once was. Within me there resided but a singular essence. A query. A solitary, relentless, unforgiving inquiry. What shall I do next? I found myself ensnared within the labyrinth of my own thoughts for the next few days. Each exchange seemed insincere. Each moment was a delicate dance, as if I were treading on fragile glass, anticipating the inevitable shatter beneath my weight. I hardly touched my food. I hardly found rest. I scarcely drew a breath. Each time I allowed myself a moment of pause, that question would creep back in, uninvited and persistent. What is my next step? Should I share this with my husband? Do I take a moment to gather my thoughts, meet his gaze, and reveal the truth? The son you cherish, the boy you nurtured, the one you would go to great lengths for, has been sharing a secret with my closest friend. Should I speak those words into the air? Do I witness the transformation of his expression, the unraveling of his reality, just as I experienced my own? Shall I grasp the match and ignite the flames that will consume this family whole? And if I do, what unfolds next? Should I remain silent? Should I conceal this secret so profoundly within me that it remains forever shrouded in darkness? Should I act as if I'm unaware? Shall I continue to reside in this house, sharing meals at this table, encountering my son in the hallway, all the while feigning ignorance to the truth that is so plainly etched upon his face? Should I pick up the phone when she reaches out? Should I maintain my smile when my husband inquires if I'm all right? Do I continue to wander through this life that feels so foreign to me now? Or shall I set it all ablaze? I gazed upon my son with new eyes. I observed him closely, paying attention to his every gesture, absorbing each word that fell from his lips. Was he aware that I was aware? Could he glimpse it in the depths of my gaze? Did he notice how my hands quivered as I poured my coffee, the way my voice faltered when I spoke to him? Or did he believe I remained in the dark? Are you still unaware? Still, the woman who bore him, the one he once held in high regard, the one he once cherished, the one he once admired. For now, uncertainty clouded our identities in relation to one another. And perhaps he wasn't that way either. And then, there she was. Her name lingered on my phone, a silent reminder of stories untold. Calls that linger without a response. Messages waiting to be discovered. She stood there, anticipation shimmering in the air, waiting for me. She sensed a disturbance in the air. An unsettling whisper that hinted at something amiss. She was compelled to. Yet, she persisted in her efforts. It seemed she still believed she could charm her way out of this predicament. It was as if she believed she could weave her fabrications around me, just as she had been spinning her tales all along. And the most troubling aspect. She was more than a best friend to me. She was the sole soul I had remaining. The sole presence that stood by my side, offering an ear, providing solace, and igniting laughter in moments when I believed joy had slipped away. She had always been the one for me. What comes next? She was the muse that danced through my thoughts, keeping me awake under the blanket of night. I found myself pondering the same question repeatedly, as if it were a riddle waiting to be unraveled. How could I have missed this twist in the tale? Was I truly that blind? Was I truly that foolish? Or perhaps, had I simply fallen short? Had I been so emotionally absent, so distant, so wrapped up in my own pain, that my son had sought comfort elsewhere? Did I truly embark on this journey? Did I nudge him in her direction? Or had this been destined to unfold? Had this been patiently awaiting my arrival all along? The burden of the secret bore down on me, growing more oppressive with each fleeting moment. With each breath it felt as though the air was slipping away, leaving me gasping in a world that closed in around me. I was not crafted for this journey. I never intended to bear such a burden, one so immense, so unsightly, so fundamentally flawed. Yet, if I were to unveil the truth, it wouldn't simply fade away into the shadows. I would be laying waste to all that lies before me. And I found myself questioning whether I was truly prepared for that moment. Uncertainty lingered in my mind, casting doubt on whether I would ever find the readiness I sought. Thus, I took the sole path available to me. I found myself seated at the crossroads of my existence, submerged beneath the heavy burden of my own understanding. And I pondered for one final moment. What path shall I take now? For in every decision I took, the world would shift, and nothing would return to its former state. And now, I direct my gaze towards you. For I find myself without the answers. For countless nights, I have found myself gazing at the ceiling, pondering every possible outcome. Yet I remain uncertain about what the right course of action truly is. So I must inquire, what course of action would you take?